Hello and welcome to this Serial Geek TV episode commentary for The Creeping Desert, an episode of Mask produced by Geek. Now, Mask fans may be thinking, why is he talking about this episode of all episodes? The reason I say that is because I've never really seen The Creeping Desert pop up on many a fan favourite list, or seen any videos with Mask fans covering the episode in depth. The Rotex, which I've already recorded a commentary for on this channel, the Magma Mole, Solaria Park, Eyes of the Skull, Fog on Boulder Hill, these episodes are rightfully celebrated by the Mask community, especially Fog on Boulder Hill. But The Creeping Desert is definitely one of those episodes that has just been with me ever since the first time I saw it. And here's the part where you roll your eyes in every video. Yes, I can still remember the first time I saw this episode air in the UK. Here's the thing though, like most Mask episodes, it aired on the Wide Awake Club and was broken up into two parts. Now, sadly I don't recall if they aired on the same day or if the Wide Awake Club broadcast one part on Saturday and one on Sunday. That said, I still recall exactly where they chose to split the episode, but we'll get to that in due course. My favourite sidekick of the 1980s, T-Bob. I cannot stress how much I love this character. And you can find numerous Mask related videos on this channel in which I also sing his praises. I get that sidekicks aren't everyone's cup of tea, but T-Bob, I just think he was one of the best. What I love about these opening scenes at Matt Tracker's mansion is that we really feel how cold it is. Yes, the snow is a big visual aid, but the animation direction does a great job with the snow out of focus speeding past the camera, combined with the sound effects of the wind. You can feel how deathly cold it is. The other reason this scene works so well is that it's such a stark contrast to the weather we're going to experience for much of the episode. A nice touch by the writer. We're barely a few minutes into the episode and the plot is immediately laid out before us. At the behest of fellow agent Gloria Baker, Mask are going to investigate the troubles she is witnessing firsthand in Acapulco. I mean, within 3 minutes of the episode beginning, we're going to see Matt Tracker selecting the Mask agents for the mission. This may be some kind of record. Maybe that's a video I can make at some point on this channel, a countdown to the quickest selection of Mask agents in an episode. Or maybe not. Let me know in the comments. Right, so I'm about to go quiet for about 5 seconds. Turn up the volume and listen to the audio.
Yeah. I can see why the workers won't return.
That is something I need to point out with this episode, and it's something that plagues all digital releases of it. You can hear the audio of another episode, Curse of Solomon's Gorge, play under the episode for The Creeping Desert. At times it's pretty distracting, especially in the quiet moments. I used to own a TV broadcast of the episode which was fine, but sadly I've yet to stumble upon a release of the episode that doesn't have the conflicting audio. If you have a perfect episode, please get in touch. And here we are, Matt Tracker selecting the best Mask agents for this mission. One thing to spot throughout this episode is the use of layering to create a great sense of depth. Numerous times in the episode we see objects in the foreground out of focus. It really helps create a wonderful sense of reality, and it shows the animation director for this particular episode actually gave a damn. So why does this episode resonate with me nearly 40 years after I saw it? There are a few factors. One, I really love the plot of this episode. It's not about world domination for Venom or a threat to a particular country. It's about land ownership and the dishonest lengths that the wealthy will go to in order to secure land that they previously don't own. As someone that lived in London much of his life, trust me when I say that land ownership bought under corrupt circumstances is pretty common. And in this episode we have the nefarious Jose Sanchez, the wealthy owner of the Acapulco Arms Hotel, who is intent on owning all of the nearby land on the southern coast, and he plans to do this by destroying the land occupied by other hotels, buying said land from them, restoring the land to its former glory, and then expanding his empire upon that very same land. It's a scarily real plot. I'm no conspiracy theorist, but this plot with the right kind of science sounds very achievable to me. Dehydrate the land, then rehydrate it. Another reason I love this episode is that it features two of my favourite vehicles that I owned as a child. Mask's Volcano and Venom's Outlaw. Ask any kid who collected Mask. These were two of the coolest toys, and yes, I was fortunate enough to own both across one birthday and one Christmas, so I adored the characters of Jacques Lafleur, whom I've mentioned my love of in numerous Mask videos on this channel, and Nash Gory, Miles Mayhem's biggest fan. In many an episode we don't really spend much or any time on the Mask transport ship, this huge piece of technology that carries all of those rather heavy Mask vehicles around the world. Usually the cast are already present in a location, or we see the vehicles suddenly pop up where they need to be, having been flown to the location by the Mask transport off camera. And there's some wonderful direction here with us really seeing the devastation inflicted upon the beautiful southern coast of Acapulco.
The north half looks like I always dreamed it would, but the southern half, egads. Perhaps Mother Nature took her lunch break.
One of my favourite line deliveries there. Perhaps Mother Nature took a lunch break. Just perfect. I love the background paintings here showing the once lush land reduced to rock, with the buildings having subsided and fallen into disrepair, and as Gloria states, this has all happened very quickly. Also, check out Gloria's little brooch. Perhaps she's a closet Star Trek fan?
Welcome to paradise. At least it was yesterday. It's gotten worse here since this morning.
I don't think I've ever really waxed lyrical about the voice talent for this show. I've talked about certain characters portrayed by certain actors, but let's just take a look at the cast for this one episode and all the roles they fill. We have Doug Stone, of course, playing the role so perfectly of Matt Tracker, but he also plays the role of the creepy Nash Gory and the nefarious Jose Sanchez. Then we have the late, great Brendan McCain as Miles Mayhem, the very British Alex Sector, and the French-Canadian Jacques Lafleur, as I've said before, one of my favourite characters and voices. Graham McKenna, who usually voices numerous characters in any given episode, actually only voices T-Bob in this episode, but T-Bob, as you'll see, has a lot of dialogue. Brennan Thicke as Scott Tracker, of course, Sharon Noble as Gloria Baker and the voice of the Masked Computer, and finally Mark Halloran as Sly Rax. Much like Graham McKenna, Halloran usually voices numerous characters in any given episode, but in this episode only voices Sly Rax. But let's be honest, it was such a wonderful voice that just one role alone is enough for we fans of this talented actor. I love the way this battle begins with us seeing the point of view of Matt's Spectrum mask as Nash Gory walks into shot with a pair of binoculars. It's actually a rather funny moment. One of the really striking things about this episode is seeing Miles Mayhem in his uniform for Outlaw piloting Switchblade. There's no reason he should be rocking that uniform, but I think it makes for a nice visual change. Usually Matt Tracker and Miles Mayhem were 100% wearing the uniforms associated with their vehicles of the episode, and even though Outlaw appears, Mayhem is piloting Old Faithful Switchblade. Now just listen to these awesome sound effects, especially Outlaw's coming up. I never forget those sounds of Outlaw transforming. Another funny scene coming up. If you've ever seen more than a few episodes of Mask, at some point Sly Rax will be fired through the air. It's a running gag that I really do need to showcase on this channel. Amazingly, this explosion does not kill Sly Rax, but sends him comically flying through the air holding the dehydrator machine, only to land on his piranha vehicle.
I got it!
I got it. He seems so happy. And this moment with volcanoes spinning down the rocky terrain towards a cliff is such a wonderful action scene. Serial Geek contributor and ace colorist Andrew Kramer cited it as being a favourite scene of his, and we can all see why. And we have Shuki Levy's awesome music and probably one of my favourite tracks of the series accompany this scene.
I don't like that look up there.
And what a way to end Act 1 with Nash Gory bearing towards Jacques Lafleur. Now, I mentioned before about this episode being broken up into two parts when shown on the Wide Awake Club. Well, you'd think they would have had the act break in the logical place during the fade to black, but they didn't. Amazingly, this was a common thing on cartoons when aired on Saturday morning TV shows and broken into two parts in the UK. Thinking about it, when cartoons would air on Sky One's Fun Factory, a cartoon block featuring a plethora of great cartoons, they would often break in the weirdest places. Some of those airings of the Transformers and the weirdly selected act breaks still haunt my viewings of those episodes. Now, we just saw Nash Gory rescued from the sea by Miles Mayhem. When he is pulled out of the water, notice that he has dark blue navy trousers on. Compared to earlier in the episode when he had light green trousers on, this was a colour change made to the character at some point in the series. Thus, certain episodes have Nash Gory with light green trousers and other episodes see him with dark blue navy trousers. Or maybe the light green was simply painted on the trousers and washed off in the sea. Now here is where the Wide Awake Club interrupted the episode, breaking it into two parts, just after T-Bob says,
"Oh, I wish Venom would find the way out and just keep going."
Yep, that's where they had the act break. Man, look at that depth. I mentioned earlier the use of out of focus layering in this episode. That was perfection. We saw the foreground come into focus. You just don't see techniques like this used in animation anymore. Ah, Nash Gory's trousers. Light green trousers again. You're going to be looking at his trousers throughout the remainder of this episode. And let's ask the question, how in the heck did Venom retrieve Outlaw from the sea? Methinks that would be no easy task. I love seeing the dehydrator machine in action. We get a real sense how powerful a weapon this could be. The way these shots are directed is wonderful, with the desert creeping over the land, trees dying instantly. And this conversation between Miles Mayhem and Jose Sanchez is just wonderful. Two bad guys that do not trust one another in the slightest. Look at this upshot of the pair coming up. That is direction to utter perfection. Oh, direction to utter perfection. Lovely little scene here with Sly Rax mocking Nash Gory, who shoves his powerhouse mask on Rax's head. Though, go back and listen to the dialogue and watch the mouth movements. I always believe that the original line reading and the lip sync has Nash Gory refer to his mask as Samson, the initial name it went by for an episode or two before being renamed Powerhouse.
That is, if he can find it.
You think you're tough enough to stop Powerhouse? Hot shot!
I always preferred the name Samson for the mask personally. As I said, I still remember seeing this episode as a kid. I also remember playing with the mask toys with my best friend Roger Evans, shout out to Roger, and we were creating scenes from this episode as best we could. Roger would come around with his mask toys. He had Thunderhawk and Scott and T-Bob along with numerous others, so our combined collection was rather awesome. So here we have the mask team meeting up to plan their next move. The dialogue is rather awesome as they ponder the success of the Acapulco Arms Hotel, how the creeping desert effects seem to have stopped short of it, and this is where they discover the mysterious man they saw with Venom earlier is in fact the owner of the Acapulco Arms Hotel. I love it. As I said earlier, this episode isn't about world domination for Venom or a threat to a particular country. It's about land ownership and the lengths that the wealthy will go to in order to secure land they previously didn't own. Mask was just a great show for bringing a reality to their fantastical world. Actually, the only thing I have a hard time buying is the fact, according to legitimate Mask press and publicity materials, that Miles Mayhem is 44 years old. I'm 2 years older than Miles Mayhem. What? And Matt Tracker being 28. Ugh, look at how much he achieved by 28. Where's my mansion? Well, you never know, the success of this YouTube channel. Actually, I think we do. I guarantee that a year after uploading this episode commentary, it'll have somewhere in the region of 500 views at most. Thankfully, I do it for the love of these shows, not because I have a quota to fill or a product to shill. Oh, that actually rhymed. Maybe that should be the motto of this channel. No quota to fill and no product to shill. Trademark Buster Toons Productions. Right, back to the episode commentary. I love how the Mask team slowly put together the pieces of the puzzle, realising that Venom can both dehydrate the land and rehydrate it, making a great deal of money in the process.
In any case, as long as Scott is at the Acapulco Arms, he could be in danger. Alex and Jacques, get rid of that machine. Gloria, let's get back to the Acapulco Arms.
So yeah, Mask now understand the nefarious plan of Venom and Jose Sanchez. I always think that this episode does a wonderful job of showcasing Acapulco, and in the context of this episode, just how popular a tourist location it was, especially during the 1970s and 1980s. If you've ever seen photos of Acapulco, the artists do a terrific job of recreating the look and feel, much like they do with London in the episode Riddle of the Raven Master. Yeah, there are a few geographical errors here and there, but for the most part the locations look exactly as you would expect them to. So bravo to the Mask background artist. Poor old T-Bob, still walking around with no hands or feet, and soon we're about to feel even more sorry for him when he kind of breaks his little robot leg. And coming up is a classic Mask trope, and yes, Mask does have a few tropes, but that's why we love it. Matt tells Scott and T-Bob not to interfere with Venom and to find cover, but of course Scott decides to intervene, and to an extent he is right to, as Mayhem and Sanchez are wrapping up their business and going their separate ways, so Scott's actions allow Mask to arrive just in the nick of time. The way the shots of Miles Mayhem and Jose Sanchez are composed looks great throughout the episode. They're often presented either side of the screen, almost like a mirror image of one another, both bad guys who will do whatever it takes to become wealthy.
Better than it was. I will own all of it.
I'll get the other machine.
You know, Mayhem is looking quite trim in these shots. Maybe he is younger than me. I always tend to forget about this action scene coming up with Rhino and Volcano up against Outlaw and Piranha. It's great seeing these two behemoths racing into action, and a great job by the artists of showing the wasteland-like conditions created by Venom's dehydrator. And speaking of which, there's that rotten machine. We get a good shot of the rehydrator machine here. I like that it's a vastly different design to the dehydrator. The exchange is made. Scott and T-Bob disguised as a moving bush, not exactly a Mask trope, but a trope of numerous cartoons of the 1980s. And now we see T-Bob's suction arms come into play, which means that the opening scene wasn't just showcasing a wonderful contrast between locations, the snowy conditions, followed by the heat of Acapulco, but also some lovely foreshadowing. T-Bob's intakes can not just suck snow, but also pull a huge device such as the rehydrator. And remember T-Bob's leg break? We're about to see it. I may have to cover my eyes whilst watching this scene.
Come on, T-Bob!
Ouch! I always feel sorry for the little guy here. That looks like it genuinely hurt him, even if he is a little robot. There's a mistake coming up here as Mayhem leans into Scott. We see that they've incorrectly painted his eyes blue. The same happened with Jacques Lafleur earlier in the episode. Odd. Also, and I've talked about this before, Scott and his robotic sidekick T-Bob have bumped into Miles Mayhem numerous times, and yet the villain never seems to recall them over and over again. It's one of those things about the cartoon that makes us scratch our heads. How does Mayhem never clock that there's a young boy and a robot turning up at numerous locations around the world, shortly followed by Mask? I love how quickly Mayhem exits the company of Jose Sanchez. Their deal really is done. Now he's on his own. In certain episodes, Miles Mayhem really betrayed his clients once he had gotten paid. The currency conspiracy and In Dutch spring to mind. Want to see a really cool visual error in this episode? Well, this particular version of the episode has the edge of the camera frame in numerous shots. That's the weird line going across the top of the screen that you can see from time to time. Well, watch when Scott celebrates their victory over Sanchez. T-Bob falls backwards, and then we can see the bottom of the cell where the camera is supposed to trim the shot.
Way to go! You're doing it, T-Bob!
That's actually quite the glaring error that was rather rare for any cartoons of the 1980s to make. In short, this particular shot was framed incorrectly. Yeah, this action scene, as I mentioned, I tend to forget about, but it does have a really amusing visual gag. Once again, Slyrax is thrown through the air and lands in the passenger seat of Outlaw.
One more time. Mirage on!
Where do they go?
An Outlaw once again drives over the cliff. I love that comedy visual of Outlaw simply driving off the cliff and Nash Gory surviving on both occasions, and presumably Venom retrieving Outlaw from the Pacific once again. The creeping desert wraps up rather quickly with these action scenes. Gloria Baker takes care of Miles Mayhem, who, we should point out, is piloting Switchblade one-handed for some reason, holding onto the briefcase of money with the other. I always did admire the way the artists animated Gloria's aura mask. That said, the special effects artists for Mask, even on the episodes that weren't visually as strong as this one, often did a wonderful job. And of course, Switchblade is flung through the air and lands right by Nash Gory and Slyrax, the pair desperately trying to keep their heads above water. Also, this line from Mayhem.
Mayhem, let us on! Can't you tell? It doesn't move! Start pushing!
Asking them to push Switchblade in the water, is that even humanly possible? Well, they seem to be doing a pretty convincing job. Also, lovely touch here with the sunlight creeping through into the camera lens, and when you think that this is a cartoon with no lenses filming anything aside from animation cells and backgrounds, it's all the more impressive. And here we have Jacques Lafleur working on the rehydration machine. When he was selected, the Mars computer stated that he was a specialist in natural disaster, and so I guess it makes sense that he is here to aid in the recovery of this ecological disaster, even though it technically wasn't natural in one sense. And hurrah, T-Bob finally has his proper limbs back. This episode was probably a body horror for the poor little robot, and the mask agents and Scott have a good laugh at T-Bob's gag. I need to count up those one day, because mask agents laughing at the end of the episode, that they would actually comment on it when episodes were broadcast on the Wide Awake Club. I actually have a recording of when the Wide Awake Club aired the episode The Plant Show, and in a rarity showed the entire episode in full. Well, at the end of that broadcast, the presenters were almost up in arms, pointing out the fact that the heroes didn't end the episode with a good old chuckle. But yeah, one day I'll sit down and put together a list of laughter at the end of Mask episodes. That is probably the video that will earn me 1 million views or something. So yeah, The Creeping Desert. This is just one of those episodes I could watch over and over and over again, and hopefully one day will, without the conflicting audio. As I said before, I just love the somewhat smaller stakes of this plot. It's not world domination, a bomb threat or anything like that. It's about land ownership. And in these trying times that we live in, land ownership is a pretty important subject matter. Now, not that my Mask videos ever receive a lot of views, but always let me know if you want more of them, more episode commentaries or anything. I love this series and always will. And that's the end of this episode commentary. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to like, share and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.